I can't see you, but I know you're there. We have heard so many interesting ideas tonight. We have heard so many interesting proposals about how we can change ourselves or we can change our world for the better. But let's face it, change is hard. Like my cousin Don just said to me this summer at a family reunion, he's like, Astra, I am so good at quitting smoking. I've done it so many times. So research tells us that the greatest predictor of our future behavior is our past behavior. And if that's the case, how are we ever going to break new ground? How are we going to chart a new course for ourselves? Lucky for me, this is what I get to do when I go to work every day. I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner, and I help people who are seeking change. I want to tell you about a student of mine. We're going to call her Roxana. Roxana walks into my office, and she is walking like this. She has 2 extremely painful hip joints. They hurt her so much that she can't do her normal life activities anymore. She can't go get the mail. She can't stand long enough to really cook dinner. And she is really depressed because she has lived a very active life. I start asking her questions, trying to understand, what happened? How did you get to this point? And I'm watching her move, and I said to her, did you have an accident? She said, no, I've just been so active my whole life, I just wore my parts out. I read the MRI report, and sure enough, she had really done some major wear and tear in her hip joints. In order to understand why this happened to her, and it doesn't happen to other people who are active, we have to talk a little bit about habits. You and I came into this world, we were born, and we were so cute. And we had certain genetics, right, that made us have a certain hair color, made me a certain height, made you look like you look. And then we had all this other stuff that was a blank slate waiting to be informed. And the way it was informed was through our experiences in the world. Our experiences with our caregivers, with our environment, all sorts of experiences. And those experiences become chunks. That is really a neurological term, chunking. Okay, so a chunk has a thought, it has a sensation in the body, it has an emotion, a feeling, and it has a movement. All those pieces together are a sequence of actions, they become a chunk. Chunks become habits. Roxana walks in, her chunk for thinking is, oh, I hope she can help me, I hope Astra can help me. Her feeling is pretty defeated, she's sad. Her sense is, this hurts, it hurts to move. And her movement, I showed you that, it's this really stiff movement. So that's her chunk. That's part of her habit. Our habits, we stack a whole bunch of them together, they become our self-image. They become what it's like for me to be me, talking to you, for Roxana to walk into my office. Our self-image gives us an idea of what we think of ourselves as capable of or incapable of. It also informs how we move physically through space, and it informs our lens and how we're seeing the whole world, what information we're sorting for. So self-image and habits have a huge influence. So Roxana, I ask her to lie down on the table that I work on, and she lies down, and she's just able to rest. She doesn't have to do anything. But even though she's lying, she has a lot of holding, right? There's stiffness, there's places that hurt. And what I do is I move her in a way that says to her nervous system, says to her brain, I got this, I'm gonna do the work, you can rest. And what happens is her muscles start to release. Once they've released, I'm able to start to move her. I can move her in ways I'm showing her brain through movement other things that are gonna make it easier to stand and to walk. One day, she gets up off the table, and instead of walking like this, she is gliding. She actually was swaying a little bit. She was almost 80, by the way, okay? So sway, whew. So she's swaying, and she is totally delighted. I mean, you can imagine it, right? It is beautiful. And after she walks back and forth in my office a few times, she goes like this. Astra, I have been bracing against my domineering husband in my hip joints my whole marriage. She had this profound awareness of how her movement was connected to her relationship. How did Roxana, after decades of marriage, have this insight all of a sudden? I'm going to tell you how. You have it too. Your body can get your brain's attention like nobody's business. When you were born, when I was born, the most important thing to our body brain was that we survive. So we oriented ourselves toward food. We're still doing it. And we got away from anything that was dangerous once we could really move, okay? You play around with how you're moving, and you will get your brain's attention immediately because you need it to survive. That's what I did with Roxana. So I can't see what you're doing, but humor me. And for a minute, please, interlace your fingers. I'm going to imagine you're an obedient crowd. Okay. So you did that without thinking, and one of your thumbs is on top of the other one. And that was just a habit that you have, and it's someplace that you know yourself to be. Well, I want you to go ahead and switch your hands in your orientation. Okay, it took you a minute. You're still doing it, some of you. Hold it there. All right, thank you. Hold it in this other orientation with a different finger on top. Now, see how that gets your attention? 1, you had to slow down. 2, it's a little, for some of you, a little ick, like, who is this person? Right? I mean, it's not a big deal, it's just your hands, right? But it's getting your attention, and it messes with your idea of who you are. That's what's happening all the time. That's what's on our side that we can play with. I want to tell you about one more student of mine. We're going to call him Boo Boo. Boo Boo was a disgruntled teenager. He was a big, strong, disgruntled teenager. And he said to me, Astra, I'm having really strong reactions at school. I'm overreacting, and I'm angry a lot. Now, look, we know teenagers can be like this. However, it was causing him a lot of social isolation and shame, and he wanted to shift it. So I kept talking to him about it, and then as I was taking a medical history, I said to him, does any place in your body hurt? Oh, yeah, my neck and shoulders are killing me. I was like, oh, okay. Can you show me can you just walk for me for a second? Let me watch you. Yeah. He walks like this. I'm serious. You can't make this stuff up. So he's walking like that. And it is not hard for me to see. Why does it hurt? Well, look, you've got these giant muscles. Big, heavy stuff is swinging around these tiny muscles, and they're not moving. Normally, you move this big thing, the top part moves with it. If I don't want to move that, it's hurting me to do it and show you, as a matter of fact. It hurts. It takes a lot of work. So he lies down on my table, and just like with Roxana, I take over the work of his muscles. I say to his brain, I got this. He starts to rest. I introduce some new habits, some new possibilities that aren't going to hurt his neck and shoulders and back so much, that hopefully will keep them in a softer, more released place. He gets up from the lesson, and he is so soft. I mean, it is sweet. His breath is lower, his chest is lower, and he's just like, and then 30 seconds pass maybe, and he goes like, ugh, like that. And I'm like, what just happened? And he said, what do you mean? And he goes back to walking. And I was like, oh. I said, so did you just get kind of spooked? Like, he's not used to feeling himself as a relaxed, calm person. It freaked him out. This, if that had an effect on you, let me tell you, you get from something like that, and it gets your attention, okay? So I said to him, well, will you humor me for a second? If I walk toward you like this, what's it like? And he went, whoa, you are scary. I was like, yeah. And tell me, you mean to be intimidating a little bit, don't you? He's like, well, yeah. Okay. So if you were going to approach somebody that you liked, that you wanted to get to know, do you think you could walk that way? or stand that way that you did when you first got up from the lesson? He's like, yeah, I think so. I was like, okay, try it out. And he was soft and he moved beautifully because he knew how to do it. His brain and nervous system knew how to do it. When he left my office that day, he now had two options. He had his intimidating thing he could do, because really that's fine to have, right? You want to do it sometimes. But he also had this softer thing that he could do when he wanted to. And he was able to do both easily. He didn't have any more neck and shoulder and back pain that day when he left, and he had new emotional options for living. So that brings me back to our question. If we are going to break new ground, if we're going to make change, how can we make it easier? Your body is your greatest untapped resource. You have everything you need sitting in your seat right now to begin the change. You have your body. You have your attention and your ability to focus it where you want. And you have a desire to change. Those are the three most important ingredients. Begin just by noticing yourself. Notice what's fun to do, what feels good. Notice what hurts. Notice what grabs your attention because it doesn't work for you, it doesn't suit you. And then start to play around just like you did with your hands. You start to play around. Oh, that's interesting. I do that. You don't have to judge it. You don't place a value on it. You just notice yourself and experiment and play. I have a friend who went back to school after being out like 15 some years, and she was really clever. She played. When she got back in the classroom, she literally went back to the back of the classroom and the teacher's up front talking, and she's like, got a little bit of this like punk rock attitude, like, oh yeah, whatever. And she kind of catches herself. She's like, whoa, what am I doing? I'm paying for this. I chose to come back to school. I applied. Like, I want to be here. What's wrong with me? And she's trying to figure out, how do I change my attitude? And when she does, she's so smart. She starts playing where she sits in the classroom, different days. And she sees, well, what's that like? What's that like? And then she lands herself up front in front of the teacher one day, and she likes it. She's enjoying it. She's there for what she showed up for. She's totally engaged. And I hope it's that easy for you. For me, that kind of change wasn't so easy. When I was in my 20s, my father, who I was very, very close to, took his own life. I was gut-wrenched. I was devastated. I did everything I could to try to figure out how to recover, how to heal. I ran a lot. I went to therapy. I did yoga. But the truth was, because I was in trauma, my nervous system was poised, looking for danger all the time. And not just for a week, I'm talking about for years. I was in fight or flight, ready to respond to any noise, any sound, you name it. I decided that this was just my new norm. Okay, this is how it's going to be me. All right, got to accept it. Thankfully, I had a really smart friend who gave me this book. It was called The Potent Self, and it was by Moshe Feldenkrais. And this guy is telling me that I can use my body and do what's easiest and rewire my brain so I have new thoughts and new feelings. I was totally intrigued. I signed up for a Feldenkrais training. In that training, I start studying. I realize that, oh, I'm doing things that are causing my difficulty. My habits are causing pain in my body, giving me headaches. The habit I was most aware of was the habit of clenching my jaw. It was clenched all the time. So in group classes and then in individual lessons like I described with my students, I started to learn how to play around, how to find other more functional options with my jaw. What happened was my nervous system really quieted. I was not in fight or flight. My breath deepened. My muscles softened. On a lunch break one day, I walk into the kitchen, and I smell this really good food. And without thought, I walk up to someone, a man, I do not know his name, and I eat off of his plate. Really, I did. I put the food in my mouth, and I'm like, did I just do that? And I say something to him like, sorry, and he's totally nice about it. And in that moment, though, I wasn't that embarrassed, and here's why I wasn't that embarrassed. I knew something profound had just happened. I had just acted as if the world was safe to live in. I had acted spontaneously. I trusted myself again. I trusted myself that I could take care of my needs. That guy, I'm still eating off his plate 18 years later. We have 3 amazing kids. I get to be a mom. That was a dream that I gave up on when my heart was broken. But I get to be a parent. And I just want you to know that this path I'm on, I'm always on it. It's still going. I'm still evolving. When I was prepping for this talk, let me tell you that jaw thing, it came right back, okay? And now I'm like, hello, friend. Yes, you were there. But I don't get into the trouble. I didn't have the headaches. I didn't have the intensity that I used to have because now I have other options. I have other things I can step into and do instead. And those other options, they landed me here in front of you today. I plan to keep changing and walking this path, and I hope you'll join me because your body is there to help you do it. Thank you so much.